What if the greatest global threat today is not the one we see every day in the media, but the one advancing in the shadows almost silently without making any noise? While international attention is focused on the most visible conflicts, especially in the Middle East or on other major political and economic crises, another much more discrete dynamic is unfolding. A far more sensitive, far more strategic, and potentially much more dangerous long-term reality. This reality is that of North Korea. For several years, this country has attracted the attention of international security experts, yet it often remains in the background of public debate. However, recent signals are far from reassuring. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, North Korea is clearly intensifying its activities related to the development of its nuclear program. Satellite observations show increased activity at several sensitive sites, as well as the construction or modernization of already known facilities. In other words, this is not a stagnant program. It is a program that is progressing and even accelerating. Some security experts even estimate that the country could be capable of producing up to 20 nuclear weapons per year, a figure that, taken alone, may seem abstract but becomes extremely concerning when placed in an already unstable global geopolitical context. To understand how we got here, we must go back several decades. The North Korean nuclear program did not emerge in a context of immediate confrontation, but in an earlier period marked by the Cold War. At that time, the USSR provided technical support for the country's nuclear development, officially for civilian purposes, mainly energy production, but very quickly, as often in nuclear history, the line between civilian and military use became blurred. Infrastructure evolved, intentions became unclear, and the first concerns appeared. In the 1990s and 2000s, Western powers began to detect major inconsistencies in Pyongyang's official statements. International inspections raised doubts, and suspicions of a clandestine military program gradually strengthened. Tensions reached a new level when the United States accused North Korea of secretly developing uranium enrichment capabilities, an essential step in the creation of nuclear weapons. Then, in 2003, a decisive turning point occurred. North Korea announced its withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, a major international agreement designed to limit the spread of nuclear weapons worldwide. This withdrawal completely changed the diplomatic dynamic around the country. 3 years later, in 2006, the regime conducted its first confirmed nuclear test. From that moment on, the situation entered a new phase. Despite international sanctions, negotiations, and diplomatic pressure, the program continued slowly but steadily. Today, although estimates vary depending on sources, North Korea is believed to possess several dozen operational nuclear warheads or warheads under development. Compared to major powers such as the United States or Russia, this number may seem smaller. But in strategic reality, it is not only the total quantity that matters, it is the destructive capability, the deterrence capacity, and above all, the political willingness to use it as a last resort. Because this is where the core of the issue lies. Why does a country subjected to heavy economic sanctions and near total diplomatic isolation continue to develop such a costly and risky program? The answer is linked to a simple but radical strategic logic: deterrence. In the vision of Kim Jong-un's regime, nuclear weapons are not just a military tool, they are above all a tool of political survival. A shield meant to prevent any external intervention. As long as these weapons exist, the strategic calculation changes completely. No country can consider a direct attack without risking catastrophic consequences. The regime therefore transforms this nuclear capability into a guarantee of existence, an insurance policy against any attempt at overthrow. And it is precisely this logic that worries the international community. A system in which the most destructive weapon becomes also the main guarantee of internal stability. In a world already marked by numerous tensions, this equation makes the situation even more fragile and unpredictable, as it rests on an extremely unstable balance where the slightest miscalculation could have irreversible consequences. And this is exactly where the situation reaches a total deadlock. On one side, the United States' position is firm and consistent. North Korea must completely abandon its nuclear program. For Washington and its allies, these weapons represent a direct threat to international stability and to the security balance in Asia. But on the other side, Pyongyang's logic is just as rigid, almost irreversible. For Kim Jong-un's regime, giving up nuclear weapons would not be a simple diplomatic gesture. In their strategic vision, it would open the door to total vulnerability. Without nuclear deterrence, the country believes it would become exposed to external pressure and even possible military intervention. As a result, neither side is willing to move, and it is precisely this rigidity that creates a lasting impasse. Even the most high-profile attempts at dialogue, including the historic meetings between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in 2018 and 2019, failed to produce any real concrete breakthrough. At the time, many spoke of a historic turning point, of a possible step-by-step denuclearization agreement, or even a new chapter in relations between the two countries. But in reality, the talks quickly revealed their limits. Disagreements over conditions, steps, and guarantees blocked any real progress. And while diplomatic discussions went in circles, the reality on the ground was very different. North Korea's nuclear program continued to advance quietly but steadily. Modernized infrastructure, technical tests, gradual improvements. Everything points to continuity and even acceleration. However, it is important to keep a balanced view of the situation. Talking about North Korea does not mean predicting an imminent catastrophe or a nuclear war in the short term. Today, these weapons primarily play a strategic deterrence role. They are designed in the logic of the states involved, not to be used. Their main function is to prevent any direct attack by making the cost of conflict completely unacceptable. However, the real risk is not limited to the existence of these weapons. It lies in the broader global dynamics surrounding their development. North Korea does not evolve in a geopolitical vacuum. It is part of an international system where major powers are gradually strengthening their military capabilities, modernizing their arsenals, and adapting their defense strategies. In this context, mistrust is increasing everywhere. Alliances are being reshaped. Regional balances are becoming more fragile, and each new display of power sends a clear signal to the rest of the world. Strategic competition is intensifying. The history of international relations shows that major crises do not always arise from a single dramatic event or a deliberate decision. They can also result from an accumulation of tensions, misunderstandings, or misinterpretations. A defensive action can be perceived as offensive. A military maneuver can be seen as a provocation. And in an already tense environment, these perceptions alone can be enough to trigger uncontrollable escalation. This gradual mechanism is what worries analysts. Not a sudden explosion, but a slow rise in risk, almost invisible in everyday life, yet very real in its potential consequences. In this context, the question goes far beyond North Korea alone. It becomes broader and systemic. It is no longer just about whether a country is developing nuclear weapons or not. It is about understanding the direction in which the international system is heading, toward more cooperation and control, or toward increasing fragmentation and a growing number of power struggles. Because every decision, every test, every military announcement helps shape this global climate, and the more tense this climate becomes, the higher the risk of mistakes. Today, the situation remains under control, but it is a fragile control dependent on the caution of actors, the stability of diplomatic relations, and the ability of major powers to avoid unnecessary escalation. Nothing is guaranteed in the long term, and perhaps this is the most important point. Today's balances are not fixed. They can change quickly in either direction. That is why this situation deserves constant attention, even when it seems distant or silent, because what is being built today in the shadow of diplomatic negotiations could have major consequences in the years to come. And now a question arises: do you think nuclear deterrence remains a guarantee of peace in today's world, or on the contrary, a long-term factor of instability? Leave your opinion in the comments. The debate is open.